everyone, I'm Miss Briana from the Hopewell Branch Library. Welcome to Fractured Fairy Tales. Today we're going to focus on the story of Cinderella. Now, I bet you know the story of Cinderella, but did you know that there are hundreds of versions of this popular fairy tale that stretch back through history? Well, one of the most popular versions is called Cinderella or the Little Glass Slipper and was written by French author Charles Perrault in 1697. And here is a copy that you can find at the library. And this copy was translated from the French by Marcia Brown and also illustrated by Marcia Brown. And in 1955, Marcia Brown won the Caldecott Award for this book. So my retelling of Cinderella is loosely based on this version. After we watch the story of Cinderella, I will introduce you to a few fractured fairy tales based on the original. And at the very end, I will show you how to make your very own fairy wand. So let's begin with the story of Cinderella. This is the story of Cinderella. Once upon a time, a girl named Cinderella lived with her stepmother and two stepsisters. Poor Cinderella had to work hard all day long so the others could rest. It was she who had to wake up each morning when it was still dark and cold to start the fire. It was she who cooked the meals. It was she who kept the fire going. The poor girl could not stay clean from all the ashes and cinders by the fire. What a mess! The two stepsisters laughed, and that is why they called her Cinderella. One day, big news came to town. The king and queen were going to have a ball. It was time for the prince to find a bride. All of the young ladies in the land were invited to come. They were wild with joy. They would wear their most beautiful gown and fix their hair extra nice. Maybe the prince would like them. At Cinderella's house, she now had extra work to do. She had to make two brand new gowns for her stepsisters. "Faster!" shouted one stepsister. "You call that a dress?" screamed the other. "Oh dear," said Cinderella. "When can I?" "When can you what?" said stepmother. "Well," said the girl, "when will I have time to make my own dress for the ball?" "You!" yelled the stepmother. "Who said you were going to the ball?" "What a laugh!" said one stepsister. "Such a mess!" They pointed at Cinderella. All of them laughed. Cinderella said to herself, "When they look at me, maybe they see a mess, but I am not that way, and if I could, I would go to the ball." Soon the time came for the stepmother and stepsisters to leave for the big party. Their fine carriage came to the door. The stepmother and stepsisters hopped inside, and they were off. Cinderella returned to the kitchen and sat by the fire. She felt very sad and alone, and said aloud, "I wish I could go to the ball too." Then, poof! All of a sudden, in front of her was a fairy. "You called?" said the fairy. "Did I?" said Cinderella. "Who are you?" "Well, your fairy godmother, of course. I know your wish, and I've come to grant it." "But," said Cinderella, "my wish is impossible." "Excuse me," said the fairy godmother in a huff. "Did I not just show up out of thin air?" "Yes, you did," said Cinderella. "Then let me be the one to say what is possible or not." "Well, I think you know I want to go to the ball, too." She looked down at her dirty clothes. "But look at me." "You do look a bit of a mess, child," said the fairy godmother. "Even if I had something nice to wear," said the girl, "I would have no way to get there." "Dear me, all of that is possible," said the fairy. With that, she tapped her wand on Cinderella's head. At once, Cinderella was all clean. She was dressed in a beautiful gown. Her hair was set up high on her head. "This is wonderful," said Cinderella. "Who said I was done?" said the fairy godmother. She tapped her wand again. At once, a beautiful carriage came to be. "Am I dreaming?" said Cinderella, looking around her. "It's as real can be," said the fairy godmother. "But there is one thing you must know." "What is that?" "All of this lasts only to midnight. Tonight at the stroke of midnight it will all be over. Everything will go back to how it was before." "Then I must be sure to leave the ball before midnight," said Cinderella. "Good idea," said the fairy godmother. "My work is done." And with that the fairy godmother was gone. Cinderella looked around her. Did that even happen? But there she stood in a fine gown, and there was her beautiful carriage waiting. She stepped into the carriage, and they were off. When Cinderella arrived at the ball, all heads turned. Who was that lovely maiden stepping down the stairs? She held her head tall and looked as if she belonged, but no one knew her. There is something about her, said the prince to himself. I will ask her to dance. And he walked over to Cinderella. Have we met? Said the prince. I am pleased to meet you now, said Cinderella with a bow. I feel as if I know you, said the prince, but of course that is impossible. Many things are possible, said Cinderella, if you wish them to be true. The prince felt a leap in his heart. He and Cinderella danced. When the song was over, they danced again, and then they danced again and yet again. Soon the other maidens at the ball grew jealous. But all the prince could see was Cinderella. They laughed and talked, and they danced some more. In fact, they danced for so long that Cinderella did not see the clock. Dong, said the clock. Cinderella looked up. Dong, went the clock again. She looked up again. Oh my, she cried out, it's almost midnight. Dong, rang the clock. Why does that matter, said the prince. Dong, called the clock. I must go, said Cinderella. Dong, went the clock. But we just met, said the prince. Why leave now? Dong, rang the clock. I must go, said Cinderella. She ran to the steps. Dong, said the clock. I cannot hear you, said the prince. The clock is too loud. Dong, rang the clock. Goodbye, said Cinderella. Up the stairs she ran. Dong, went the clock. Please, stop for a moment, said the prince. Oh dear, she said, as one glass slipper fell off her foot on the stair, but Cinderella kept running up and out the door. Dong, said the clock. Please, wait a moment, said the prince. Dong, rang the clock. I don't know your name. Dong. The clock was quiet. It was midnight. Wait, called the prince. He picked up her glass slipper and looked all around, but could not see her blue dress anywhere. This is all I have left from her, he said, looking down at the glass slipper. He saw that it was made in a special way to fit a foot like none other. Somewhere there is the other glass slipper, he said, and when I find it, I will find her too. Then I will ask her to be my bride. From hut to hut, from house to house, went the prince. One young woman after another tried to fit her foot inside the glass slipper, but none could fit, and so the prince moved on. At last the prince came to Cinderella's house. The stepmother flew open the door. Come in, she said. I have two lovely daughters for you to see. The first stepsister tried to place her foot in the glass slipper. She tried hard, but it just would not fit. Then the second stepsister tried to fit her foot inside. She tried and tried with all her might, but the slipper would not fit. Maybe I could try the slipper, said Cinderella, stepping into the room. I thought you said there were no other young women here, said the prince. None who matter, said the stepmother in a hiss. Come here, said the prince. Cinderella stepped up to the prince and put the glass slipper on her foot. It fit perfectly. Then, from her pocket, Cinderella took out something. It was the other glass slipper. I knew it, he cried. You are the one. What? Shouted the stepsister. Not her, screamed the other stepsister. This cannot be, yelled the stepmother. But it was too late. The prince knew that Cinderella was the one. He looked into her eyes. He did not see the cinders in her hair or the ashes on her face. I have found you, he said. And I have found you, said Cinderella. And so Cinderella and the prince were married, and they lived happily ever after. The end. Hi again. I hope you enjoyed my retelling of the story of Cinderella. Now I want to introduce you to a few more books that retell the story in a unique or unusual way. So the first one I want to tell you about is Cinderella Liberator. It's written by Rebecca Solnit with illustrations by Arthur Rackham. And in this version of the story, Cinderella, who would rather just be Ella, meets her fairy godmother, goes to a ball, and makes friends with the prince. But instead of marrying the prince, the two start talking about what they really want. And Cinderella wants to have her very own cake shop, and the prince wants more freedom to do actual work. So Cinderella learns that she can help herself and those around her by being true to herself and standing up for what she believes. And I would recommend this story for families to read together. It's a little bit longer, but it has really nice illustrations that with lots of detail, and it'll allow families to talk about any questions that might come up. that show that the story is a little bit different than the original. You can find this version of the book in the juvenile section at the library. Now, the next book I want to introduce you to is called Princess Furball. It's written by Charlotte Huck and illustrated by Anita Lobel. And in this story, Cinderella is the daughter of a cruel king, and she runs away to escape an arranged marriage to an ogre. When she runs away, she disguises herself in a coat of 1,000 furs. And after being found one day by the king's hunting party, she is taken back to the king's house, where she becomes a servant to the servants. And one night, she dazzles the court at the king's ball. And I enjoyed this story because the princess comes up with a brave plan, and she overcomes many obstacles and does not have a fairy godmother to save her. And as you can see, the illustrations are beautiful. Here's one of Cinderella at the royal ball. So you can find this one in the nonfiction section at the library, and it's under 398.2, and it has the letters HUC for Anita Huck's last name. Okay, the next one I want to introduce you to is a modern twist of the Cinderella story. This one's called Interstellar Cinderella, and it is written by Deborah Underwood and illustrated by Meg Hunt. And this is the story of Cinderella, who's a mechanic, and she loves to fix things. Her parents won't let her go to the space ball, but with a little help from her fairy god robot, Cinderella ends up fixing an old rocket that she uses to go to the space ball. And she ends up leaving behind her wrench, and the prince goes everywhere to find the person who owns this wrench. He asks people to fix a spaceship with the wrench to see if they know how to use it. And her stepmother and stepsisters can't use the wrench, but when Cinderella steps forward and uses the wrench to fix the prince's ship, he realizes that she was the one that he met at the space ball. And in the end, Cinderella decides she's too young to be married, and she becomes the royal mechanic and lives happily ever after. So this is a great book for preschoolers. It's got lots of rhyming verse, and the illustrations are really fun. And you can find this in the easy section at the library. Now, the last book I want to introduce you to is called The Golden Sandal, and it's a Middle Eastern Cinderella story, retold by Rebecca Hickox and illustrated by Will Hillenbrand. And this version of the story comes from Iraq and was originally called The Little Red Fish and the Clog of Gold. And you can read about the original story in the author's note at the back of the book. So in this retelling, Maha, a kind and beautiful girl, is mistreated by her stepmother and stepsister. And when she rescues a magical red fish, the fish rewards her for her kindness. Over the years, the fish helps her until one day, the fish gives her fine clothes to wear to the wedding of the daughter of a rich merchant. She stays too long, and when she leaves, she loses her golden sandal. The bride's brother, Tariq, finds the sandal and searches all over for the owner. Of course, Maha's foot fits perfectly, and she and Tariq live happily ever after. And I like this story too. I thought the illustrations were really fun. And it was a really interesting retelling of the story. And you can find this in the nonfiction section under 398.2 and then HIC for the author's last name. So as you can see, there are many more versions of the story, and I have them surrounding me today. And I have created a list about some of the books that I introduced today and some other stories that you might enjoy. And you can find this document on the Kids Corner page of our website, and it's under online content, and there is a link to printable activities. And on the same page, I've included instructions on how to make your very own fairy wand, which I'm going to show you how to do now. Let's learn how to make the fairy wand. So first you're going to need to gather some materials together. You're going to need some glue, some scissors, a plastic straw, some cardstock or cardboard. I used an old cereal box, just something a little bit thicker than regular paper. Something to color with, like markers or colored pencils or crayons, and a star pattern. So you can use the one that I created and posted on the printable activities page of the library website. And what you'll do is you'll cut out the star, and you're going to use this as a template. And you'll trace around the star on your cardboard and create 2 stars, which you'll then cut out. So once you have your 2 stars cut out of the cardboard, you can decorate them. So when I decorated my fairy wand, I used a yellow colored pencil, and then I applied a little bit of glue to the star, and I sprinkled some glitter on top. So that got a little bit messy, so I want to advise you to make sure that you have a little piece of paper on your table to gather any of the glitter that doesn't make it onto your wand. So once your 2 stars are decorated and dry, you're now going to make the fairy wand. And the way that you do that is that you're going to take your plastic straw and you're going to try to flatten out the tip of it. So I actually used my glitter jar and flattened it out that way. And that'll just make it easier for the star to be put together. So now you're gonna make a star sandwich. You're gonna put one down and put glue all over the back of your star, and put your straw on top, and then put glue all over the back of your other star. And then you're gonna make a star sandwich, and what you're gonna have to do is just hold it together for a little while until the glue dries in place. And you're gonna make it really tight. And once it's all glued together, you'll have the wand. And then if you have some extra ribbon around, what I did is I tied my ribbon to the straw, and I used 2 knots, and I was able to actually slide it under the star a little bit. And that's all you need to do to make your fairy wand. And again, on this activity sheet, I created the star pattern, and then I have instructions for the craft so that you can follow along at home. So I hope you had fun today, and I hope you'll join us for more Fractured Fairy Tales this summer, and have a great day.